probably far more drastic in other parts of the country than it is here in New Jersey, but there is some differences in how small group health insurance will be rated, small group being defined as 50 or fewer employees. And there's various market reform provisions as it relates to small employers. The first is how premiums are developed. So there's certain ways premiums can be developed minus the effective date of the plan that you choose. How are we going to rate your employee population to develop the rates that you get? All right, so there's certain things you can use and there's certain things you can't use. All right, down at the bottom you'll see everything's guaranteed issue, which it is now. It's been since 1994, so you can't use medical history to rate small group only insured medical insurance. You can't do that now, so that's not that big of a change. What you can use is a 3-to-1 ratio on age. So that's the maximum you can use. So the youngest person or the healthiest person or the best risk person in comparison to the oldest person or the worst risk person, it can't be more than a 3-to-1 differential. So if I'm charging that the best risk $100, I can't charge the worst risk more than $300. See how that works? Right now we use a 2-to-1 modified community rating, so ours is actually more strict than what they're allowing you to use. All right, so that's not that big of an issue. The other thing is you're allowed to use tobacco on a 1.5-to-1 ratio, meaning that you can charge people that smoke 50% more than people that don't. However, from the news that I read, most government exchange programs are not going to be able to actually administer that. So that might be a allowable provision or a permissible way of rating health insurance that they don't actually use. They may continue to rate it based 1-to-1, so smoker, non-smoker pays the same thing. But they're allowed to go 1.5-to-1, but I think they'll stay at 1-to-1. The other thing I want to mention is that Medicare status is no longer permissible as a separate rate tier. So what the heck does that mean? That means for groups that are less than 20 lives, right, that are Medicare primary, and are now with Horizon and potentially getting what's called a Medicare carve-out rate, where you have a single person on Medicare that's paying less than all the other single people, you can't do that anymore. For the other carriers that don't have a carve-out rate, that maybe just behind the scenes in your overall rate development, rate that person more favorably, can't do that anymore. So I would imagine that will result, for the groups under 20 lives who have people that are Medicare eligible, will result in a rate increase, amongst other things, come your renewal in 2014. All right? So the age issue is not that big of a deal. The tobacco use probably won't be used. You can't use gender at all. So if you're young and female, that's probably a good thing. If you're young and male, that's probably a bad thing, as far as the differential between what it is now. If you're looking for small employers, how they'll be rated on and off the exchange come January 1, 2014, or your renewal January 1, 2014. There's another provision that's not talked about too much, which is called the Guaranteed Availability and Renewability provision, which basically says that if you enroll as a group between October 15th and November 15th for a January 1 effective date, you can't be turned down based on your inability to meet participation or employer contribution guidelines. You can be terminated for that reason upon renewal, but you can't be turned down initially. So you may need to change carriers every year. So that's something that we have an eye on to see how that's eventually going to work. But if you're a small employer that's typically have a challenge or a hard time meeting participation, there may be a solution for you in the interim.